Have you ever wondered what leverage is and how it can be both a powerful tool and a double-edged sword? When I first started trading, the term leverage was like a dark spell, invoking fear but also intrigue. Let's peel back the layers together and see just how this mysterious concept works under the hood. Imagine you're playing with building blocks. You have 10 small blocks in one hand. In your other hand, you have an instruction manual that says, use 5 of those blocks to build a tower that looks exactly like the one on page 2. That's kind of what leverage is, using a smaller amount of money, your initial investment, to control a larger sum, the total value of your trade. It amplifies both potential gains and losses. Now, picture you're at an airport. You see a small plane with 4 wheels and another one with 8 wheels. The plane with 8 wheels isn't just bigger, it has more power. That's leverage. It gives you way more control over the market, but if things go wrong, the crash can be much harder. So, that's the question we're diving into today. What exactly is leverage, and why is it so dangerous? Let's find out. So, what exactly is leverage? Well, imagine you're at a grocery store and you want to buy apples. Now, most people just pick up the number of apples they can afford. But with leverage, it's like borrowing money from a storekeeper to get more apples than you could normally carry. Let's break this down a little further. Suppose you have $10 in your pocket, but there's a really yummy apple variety on sale for only 50 cents each. With regular shopping, you can buy just 20 apples. But with leverage, the storekeeper agrees to let you use their money as well. Suddenly, you're able to buy 40 apples, or even more if they offer higher leverage terms. Here's a key point. When you're using borrowed money, the same profit or loss applies to your initial investment and the borrowed amount. So, those extra 20 apples can lead to big gains if prices go up, potentially doubling your total apple count. But if you're wrong, those losses can also be much larger. Okay, so let's cut right to the chase. How does leverage actually work? Imagine you want to buy a $100 stock, but you only have $50 in your pocket. Without leverage, buying that stock would be impossible because it exceeds what you can afford. But here's where leverage steps in. With leverage, the exchange or broker essentially lends you the other half of the money, the extra $50, to make your trade possible. This means instead of just owning a 1% stake, since you're putting in $5, you now own a full 2% stake because you're using both your cash and borrowed funds. Here's how it looks under the hood. Let's say your stock goes up by 10%. Without leverage, if the stock was originally at $100 after a 10% increase, it would be worth $110. You'd make an extra $10 on that investment. But with leverage, you're effectively putting more skin in the game. Here's where it gets interesting. And here's the surprising part. When things go south. If the stock price drops by 20%, your losses are amplified too. In our example, if the stock was originally at $100 and fell to $80, you'd lose $20. But because of leverage, this means a 40% loss on just the $50 you invested. So remember, while leverage boosts potential gains, it also magnifies losses. In this case, if your leverage ratio was 2 to 1, you borrowed twice what you put in. That 20% drop results in a 40% hit to your initial investment. And here's the surprising part. Leverage doesn't just increase your potential profits, it also increases your potential losses. Think about it like this. Imagine you have a small jar filled with marbles, each representing $100 of investment. Now, let's say someone offers you 5x leverage on those marbles. Suddenly, instead of each marble being worth $100, they become worth $500. If the stock price goes up, your gains are magnified too. You might go from having a jar worth $1,000 to one worth $2,500, a 150% gain. That's impressive. But what happens if it goes the other way? Well, now you're in for a big loss. If the stock price drops, and instead of gaining, your marbles lose value, you could end up with a jar that's worth only $500, half of your initial investment. In this case, leveraging actually triples your risk. And here's another thing to consider. If the market moves against you, leverage can quickly turn small losses into big ones. Imagine you had 1% in commissions and fees. Normally, that wouldn't be a big deal. But with high leverage, those fees become much more significant as your gains or losses get magnified. So, while leveraging can give you a supercharged ride, whether up or down, It's also like having a car without brakes. You need to drive carefully because one small mistake can lead to major consequences. But here's the surprising part. Because of this magnification, a small price movement can lead to big losses. It's like driving a Ferrari on a wet road. Very exciting, but potentially deadly. Imagine you're in a car race with your friend, both driving Ferraris. Your friend has twice as much money as you do and decides to borrow some cash to bet on his Ferrari. He has $10,000 of his own and borrows another $5,000 from the bank, making his total investment $15,000, 3 times yours. Now, let's say the track conditions are a bit slippery, like a rainy day. You're both racing hard, but your friend hits a patch of mud. He skids and loses control, hitting the wall. Because he borrowed so much money, his losses are huge. He not only loses his $10,000, but also owes the bank another $5,000 on top, for a total loss of $20,000. You, with your original $10,000 bet, might just lose everything as well, but your losses are more manageable. In trading terms, this is what happens when you use leverage. Just like in a race, when conditions change, like market conditions, a small movement can lead to significant losses because of how much money you're betting. And if the market moves against you, those losses can compound quickly. The key here is that while leverage amplifies your gains, it also amplifies your potential for loss. It's like taking a roller coaster ride, exciting but not without risk. So remember, leverage is a powerful tool that needs to be handled with care. Imagine you're flying a small airplane solo for the first time. You have less control, more risk, and a higher chance of things going wrong if you take on too much weight or try to do too many maneuvers at once. Leverage in trading works similarly. When you use leverage, it's like putting more fuel in your engine. It makes you fly faster and higher, but also increases the risk of crashing. You need to know when to stop adding fuel and let the plane glide smoothly back down. Always consider the risks before you borrow more than you can afford to lose. Now that you understand leverage better, why not subscribe to stay ahead of market insights? Knowing how the markets work is like having a map for your next flight. Whether it's planes or trades, understanding the underlying mechanisms helps you make smarter decisions. And who knows, maybe you'll even spot a market opportunity before anyone else does.